The inspiration behind this More Than a Moment campaign actually came from a personal experience. So I had the pleasure of doing a vacation to Ireland with my family just earlier this year. And we all came back and agreed that was the best vacation that we had ever taken. I kind of wondered why, and I thought, well, we just went to Ireland. We're not world travelers, so it was just we went to this cool new place, and naturally 8 days in a new location would be the best ever. But then I thought, I don't actually think that's why it was the best vacation ever. I think it was more than that. And I started thinking about what went into this vacation, and it started literally months before the 8 days we spent in Ireland. So we worked for months with a travel agent who helped us strategically decide where are we going to fly into, what are the cities we're going to visit, what kind of things do we want to do in each location. So there was a clear plan laid out from the beginning. But then separately, we were all over YouTube. I mean, constantly on YouTube, looking at videos about the places we were going to go and the things that we need to do and what are faux pas that we might unintentionally do that could mess things up. What was driving on the left-hand side of the road going to be like, which was the craziest part of the trip. And so the experience started well before we ever got on an airplane and went on the trip. Now, the cool thing that happened, because we did all that, when we landed in Ireland, it was all about the experience. It was all about being there in person, experiencing everything, and doing the things you usually do at an event like this. I kissed the Blarney Stone. I had a pint of Guinness in a pub. I did all the things, but because we had put so much time in up front, we were able to do some really off-the-grid things as well that really added to the experience. We kind of innovated and immersed ourselves in some things that were a little different than usual. So the moment itself was great. And then the coolest part was it actually didn't stop when we got back, meaning the experience extended into that post-vacation period where we posted all the pictures online and we shared our experiences with family and with friends, and we told the stories of all the cool things that we had an opportunity to do. We all of a sudden, maybe by accident, maybe not, we met a million other people who either had just gotten back or were going to Ireland, and so we exchanged stories and continued the process of the experience. And then we even started teaching, so people were coming to us saying, oh, you just went to Ireland, tell us what we should do and how we should go through the process. And so the epiphany was the vacation wasn't just the 8 days that we spent in Ireland. It was much more than that moment. And so I think there's a lot of different ways in life we can consider that concept, but most certainly in the way that we approach business. So how does this relate to what our partners are going through right now? Well, to me, this is the time of year that everybody starts thinking about those Q1 meetings, the national meeting, POA, splinter meeting, whatever a company happens to call it. And we start getting very focused on the moment. Okay, we're going to be in Las Vegas or Orlando for X number of days. We've got X number of hours of workshops to build, and we zero in on that, which on some level is appropriate. My contention would be, though, that we have to think of these meetings as more than a moment, that it's more than just those hours of workshops. We need to be putting just as much time, if not more time, in the mobilization phase, the phase prior to the meeting where we're thinking about our strategy, where we're thinking about how we're going to prepare the audience from a content and a knowledge perspective, brand materials, disease state knowledge, product information about the competitor, and just as importantly, building enthusiasm for why are we going to this meeting? What is that common purpose we have in serving our patients or our healthcare providers? We need to really invest and think about what that's like before we think about, okay, what is the workshop actually going to look like, or the workshops? How are we going to focus on application and get people really engaged with the material, using the material? How do we engage an adult learner today? I mean, these people have been in the industry for 20 years. How do we do something different maybe that they haven't done a number of times already, or put a different flavor on it to make that moment stand out maybe as different than things that they've done in the past? And then finally, how do we get to that third phase, which is this momentum phase? How do we have them leave the meeting with a very thoughtful approach to what do we do now? How do we continue the learning? How do we enhance the learning? How do we measure the kind of impact that we're having with the information that we spent so much time and money into that meeting? How do we make sure it's going to good use and having the value that we want it to have for customers? So is this just common knowledge, right? This idea that, okay, sure, an event we're going to have, there has to be we have to do things at the meeting and then we have to do things after. Is that just common knowledge? And my answer to that would be yes, it's common knowledge. I doubt you would talk to anybody in this industry that would say, oh my gosh, I had no idea that you should do those things. However, I think there's a quote out there that says, what is common knowledge is not common practice. And so my experience is, despite knowing that that's the case, we actually do invest an inordinate amount of our time on the moment. The 3.5 hours of workshop time at the meeting, we focus all of our attention on that, and we don't invest the amount of time we need to on the mobilization, that pre-meeting phase. We don't think nearly enough about the momentum phase, that after phase. And so there really is an opportunity, despite it being somewhat common knowledge, to be much more intentional about how we look holistically at these events as more than a moment. So I kind of think of it as 3 phases, and I think it would be easy to call them pre-meeting, meeting, and post-meeting. I think it's easier to label them in this way. The first phase being mobilize. So you think about, you need to really mobilize an audience to get the most out of the meeting you're about to have. And that term mobilize to me is about preparation first. How do we prepare the team with knowledge, information, context, so that they can arrive at that meeting ready to go? That could be preparation around brand materials. It could be preparation around disease state or product information. It could be preparation around a competitive landscape. Whatever the focus of the training is going to be at the meeting, there has to be a level of preparation that goes into them being ready to apply and immerse themselves at the meeting. But the other part, and we don't probably think about the other part enough, is enthusiasm. So think about a meeting you've gone to where, okay, you're prepared, but it's very sterile and academic. I know the material, but am I engaged with why we're going to this meeting, about what we're going to accomplish, why we're going to accomplish it, and how we're going to really throw ourselves into this process for the greater good of the organization and the patients that we're there ultimately to serve. The mobilization phase or the pre-meeting phase, an amazing opportunity to focus on those things before we even think about what we're going to do in the second phase. And the second phase is the part we invest, again, 95% of our time on, which is the moment. It's the day, the 2 days, the 3 days in Orlando, where we're going to have everybody together and hopefully have really good experiences. And so to me, at the moment phase, we need to be thinking about application. The time has passed for us to transfer knowledge. Let's think about ways to get them doing things with the information that we want them to use to have an impact with their customers. So it's application, but also engagement. Can we engage them in ways that we haven't before? What does that look like for an adult learner today? Lots of distraction. How do we engage them and immerse them in the content in ways that maybe they're not expecting and that can have a real impact? And then the third phase, we talk a lot about it in concept, but we're not nearly as proactive as we should be about it. And that's the momentum phase, or what we call sustainment or pull-through. And we always talk about it, but we never talk about it early enough in the process. What are we going to do when the moment is over, everybody gets on their plane, goes back to where they're from, and now the hard work begins of actually doing the work that we want to do? So to me, the keys there are measurement. Can we measure the actual impact that they're having? And that probably starts in the first phase and the second phase too, but measurement has to be a key component in your momentum phase, along with impact. Can we be sure that we're having the impact that we want to have? And there's a number of ways that we can look at doing that. So to me, those are the 3 phases. It's mobilize, it's the moment, and ultimately it's momentum in that post-meeting phase. So, and I don't think this is just about meetings. I think this time of year, we're thinking a lot about those meetings that are happening in Q1, the national meeting, splinter meeting, POA meeting. However, I think as a life concept or any training, frankly, that we're going to create, we should be thinking about it not in a vacuum, but as more than a moment. If we're going to create and deliver an e-learning module, well, it shouldn't just be about the moment that we put that in the LMS and release it to the field. It should be, well, what's happening in that mobilization phase? How are we preparing everybody to engage with that content? Then what is that moment like when they receive the module? Have we created an application and engagement-focused module for them? And then what happens after they take the module? How do we let that gain or build momentum over time so they can have impact? Can we measure the change that it's created? It doesn't have to just be about meetings. It should be about anything we create needs to be handled or approached as more than a moment. That mobilization, that moment itself, followed by the opportunity to build momentum. Well, it's a full experience. I think we have spent a lot of time, because these meetings are so high profile, because brand has so many things that they want to accomplish at the meeting, because the sales leadership has an opinion on what should happen, the stakes get really high for what needs to happen and how this meeting has to come across. And so we end up then getting very focused on the meeting itself, and we get kind of blinders on to the fact that there are things that need to happen before to mobilize that moment, to make sure that it has the impact that you want it to have. And then more importantly, when people come to you 6 months later and say, hey, did that training even work? Have we thought about what we're doing in the momentum phase to say that there are things we're going to do to measure and determine what sort of impact happens? So this is definitely something that is common knowledge. It's not common practice. And I understand why. There's a lot riding on these meetings. And I think partners like Red Nucleus have a unique opportunity to come alongside the people that we work with and help make sure that we're putting attention in the right places, that if there is a need for creative ideas or ways to approach things differently, well, I mean, that's literally what we've done for 30 years, is come alongside customers and have ways to build a great strategy, to transfer knowledge, to create exceptional experiences, to be thoughtful about what measurement looks like in a post-meeting. I mean, it's what our whole company was built on. And I think we're in a unique position this year and every year to come alongside our partners and be a part of this being more than a moment.